What's going on, everybody? Once again, I have a big project in the works, and once again, I wanted to lighten things up with a quick little question. I'm not going to deny this is one of my weirder video ideas, but hear me out. Zack Snyder is an impressive and interesting filmmaker, but what if he was your dungeon master? Would you and your crew have a good time playing D&D if the campaign was a Zack Snyder movie? I'm going to look at 10 movies based on what would be the best D&D adventure. Keep in mind I'm focusing only on their potential for role playing. What has a solid story structure, a compelling party of characters, good set pieces for combat encounters. I'm not asking if it's a good movie, I'm asking if it's good D&D. This is a ranked list starting with what I think would be the worst or hardest to run D&D game and working my way up to the best. Here we go. D&D typically features a party of characters embarking on a journey to defeat a villain, save the world, or sometimes just get rich or die trying. Man of Steel is all about one character's backstory. You don't play D&D for the backstory, you give your level 1 character a backstory before you start playing so you can jump right into the action with your friends. Man of Steel does have action and some nice lore as well as establishing our protagonist's traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws, but as a full package D&D experience, it would fall short. Your D&D party doesn't always have to get along. There can be PvP. But pitching an adventure with that idea in mind is probably not the best start. Sure, the good guys come together in the end and start to put together a group of heroes, but most of the story is spent meandering through a web of motivations and side characters. Sucker Punch is probably my favorite Snyder movie, and it hurts me to put it this low on a list, but we're talking about what makes a good D&D adventure. Each and every one of Sucker Punch's fight scenes are incredible and display a character or a party in kick-ass scenarios. But that's a few layers deep. How do you portray your character getting locked in an asylum, then imagining an escapist fantasy where they're actually in some kind of brothel, then imagining they're actually in multiple action scenarios across various genres, all while you yourself are playing an escapist fantasy role playing game? I'm not saying that it can't be done. I'm sure someone has tried it, and there's probably an indie RPG somewhere just like it, but it has to be difficult. This one would take a lot of work to get right. By the way, I did some snooping around on the internet and did find one interesting suggestion for an RPG that could handle this, and that is the Maze of Dreams playset in Girl by Moonlight, the magical girl RPG that uses the same system as Blades in the Dark. This is neat because I own Girl by Moonlight, so I could potentially try this out after I'm done running the playset that uses space mechs. Watchmen presents us with a party of characters, effectively former adventurers in various stages of retirement, who are thrust back into the action when the world is in danger. That's some solid potential for a D&D game with a couple setbacks. There are a lot of backstories and histories covered, which doesn't flow the best in a D&D session, although you could deal with that using a flashback mechanic and B-team characters. There's also the postmodern aspect to deal with. Watchmen is a commentary on the superhero genre itself, and if I were pitching a Watchmen-inspired D&D game, it would question the nature of adventurers as a societal good within the setting. There's absolutely something there, but kind of like Sucker Punch, it would take some work. 300 has plenty of fighters, a journey to a dangerous locale, swords and shields, kings and scheming, magic and monsters. So why is this not higher? Why is this not number one? Well, there's one big issue. And no, I'm not going to get into the fascist reading of the film. We're talking about the game. It's not just Leonidas and a ragtag group of defenders. There are 300 dudes against a massive enemy army. Modern D&D is not a war game. Its chassis cannot effectively bear the load of mass combat. There's certainly homebrew for it, and I've tried a few methods in my own games to varying success, but at the end of the day, if you want to smash two armies together and roll dice, then you're better off playing Warhammer. That's not to say there isn't something significant to salvage from 300 for your D&D game. You can focus on the actions of a smaller party making pivotal moves that turn the tide in the broader battle taking place in the background. You can lift individual scenes from the movie as combat encounters, and you can try to use Xerxes' voice for your next villain. 300 is an awesome movie, and I think it can make an awesome D&D game. Zombies and undead are a D&D staple. The mall is effectively a dungeon that our characters are trapped in and have to escape from. This is a great setup, especially for a one-shot. It's a little thin on details, and the film spends more time on interpersonal drama and survival considerations than zombie fights, but those are still aspects of D&D, so it totally works. It's not the most deep or exciting idea, so you won't get much mileage out of it, but I could see this as a perfect D&D tutorial for first-timers. Rebel Moon is already a D&D adventure. It uses the classic Seven Samurai setup to pit a group of ragtag badasses with different backgrounds and skills up against an evil empire attacking a quaint farm village. You don't even have to take away the ships and lasers. D&D has rules for space fantasy, and if you really want to do it right, you can try out Starfinder. Every character in the squad is already a familiar D&D archetype, and there are some pretty cool fight scenes. But aside from that basic setup, there's not much there to inspire you beyond just, well, basic. The villains aren't interesting, the backstories are thin, the conflict is simple. Above all, I don't think your players will want to spend 2 hours of downtime rolling to see how much grain they can harvest. Okay, like most of you watching, I have not seen the Owl movie. Is what I would have said if it wasn't bugging me the whole time I was thinking about this video, so I watched it. I knew the premise. I had heard it was a bunch of fantasy owls getting together for an adventure against evil owls, so as a guess, I put it at number 4. But now that I have seen the owl movie, I can with confidence place it up one whole number. Soren the barn owl is very much the main character owl of this movie, with possibly too many owls, but he does have a best friend and a party, and that party includes a big bard with a lute named Twilight, my favorite owl. It features exploration to fantastical locales, magical rocks, frightening monsters, weapons and armor crafted for owls by owls, owl nobles, and owl race supremacists, and loads of thrilling slow motion owl action, and also some bats, who are basically our goblins, I guess. Legend of the Guardians has it all. My only D&D critique is that it might have too much plot going on. Which makes sense, the movie was an adaptation of the first 3 books in the Owl series. But when you're looking at a D&D adventure, it's important to tighten up the broad story structure into a satisfying narrative. Legend of the Guardians feels like a multiple adventure campaign. Maybe that could be its strength if you run the whole owl game because you really like owls. By the way, the fact that everyone's an owl shouldn't even be a problem. There is literally a canon D&D race called Owlin. Hopefully that just made someone's day. There's a lot of potential here, evidenced by the fact that there are 16 owl books, so Legend of the Guardians keeps a respectable spot at number 3. I'm choosing to ignore the Joss Whedon version and focus on Zack Snyder's fully realized vision for the superhero team-up movie. The Justice League is not only a fitting example of a D&D party, it's a great example of something we don't see often, a high-level D&D party taking on a truly major threat. There's MacGuffins and time magic, lore exposition, a big boss villain with a bunch of evil minions, personal stakes for all our party members, and the final act lays out a series of combat encounters and puzzles on multiple levels that requires the party to split up and use their unique skills. Heist movies are already a decent setup for a D&D adventure. You get the party together, establish the stakes, and set out on a quest for the treasure. Army of the Dead ups the ante by presenting us with what is essentially a mega dungeon. The environment itself is a threat. Every door leads to more enemies, and unlike Dawn of the Dead, there is actually some variation to the zombies you might encounter. The individual characters all have their shticks. They all get in on the action. There are ulterior motives and personal weaknesses, and it's not clear who will live or die as things escalate. This would make for an absolutely fantastic D&D adventure. And that's going to do it for this video. Thanks for watching. Do you agree with my picks? What would you rank up or down? Let me know in the comments and have a nat 20 day. Bye bye.